think I have everything. I'm trying to go live right now.
Okay.
Looks like it's working.
Welcome to Black Man Lab. We are live on both YouTube as well as Facebook. Welcome. We missed you all last week because we had some technical difficulties, but we have our same topic this week and look forward to having a very lively discussion around Black men interacting with the police. Obviously, this is a a hot topic for us in today's environment. So we want to be able to have some good discussion around it and what that picture looks like. I am Marty Monaghan. I am the vice chair of the Black Man Lab. With me, I have my partner and my brother in the struggle, Brother Fred Parham, who will be co-hosting with me today, as well as Maoli Davis should be joining us at some point. He'll jump in. He's the founder, one of the founding members of Black Man Lab. So with that, I want to introduce Brother Fred Parham. Brother Fred.
Hey, good evening, Marty. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing good, brother.
Hey, man, I'm excited to be back in the hosting chair right next to you, man. I'm usually in the background and tonight, so I'm looking forward, as you said, to a great echo, man. I know many people are talking about this topic in various ways, but I think the Black Man Lab will have a unique approach that I'm excited for the listening audience and viewing audience to hear.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things that we do is just give everybody a little bit of background on the Black Man Lab. Black Man Lab was founded on the subject of some fathers wanting to be able to get through to their sons information that we as fathers a lot of times with our sons struggle with. It's funny how our sons a lot of times will listen to somebody else other than us. So Maoli Davis and a bunch of other brothers thought of it and got their sons together to have different topic matter to go over to be able to help their young sons navigate life, if you will. And so from that, Black Man Lab was created, and today it's grown to what it is. Normally we're doing live sessions at the YMCA, the Young YMCA, and we'll have a group of up to 250 men in the room and be able to really give good information to these young folks to help them to kind of matriculate into adulthood. One of the things that we do in all of our live sessions before we get started is we work hard to make sure that we are in a safe and sacred space for all of the members that are there to open their minds up and open their bodies up to really taking in information. And with that, one of the things that we know that we need to do is recognize where we come from. And when I say that, I mean recognize all those shoulders that we stand on to get to where we are today. That is our ancestors. So with that, we do a libation where we reach back. And I'm going to ask Brother Fred to go ahead and get us started with that and help to get us centered. Brother Fred?
Yeah, sure, Marty, man. So tonight, for our listeners and viewers, we want to start by first taking a deep breath to get centered. Marty mentioned a safe and sacred space. And so in creating that environment virtually and when we're in the same room, brothers and sisters, what we do is we're going to leave all of the stress and strain outside of this safe and sacred space by first starting with a deep breath. Everybody take a deep breath who's listening. Inhale. And exhale. 2, 3. Again, inhale. 1, 2, 3. Hold it and exhale. 3, 2, 1. And that ritual is, again, just to center us and make us focus on the moment that we're in and the great information we're about to get. And then next, Marty, in light of what you said, bro, about honoring our ancestors and the shoulders on which we stand, we're going to do this virtual libation, and we're going to ask those listening and watching to just go ahead and hold up a fist and think of an international ancestor who might have inspired you to study more about African history, go beyond slavery, or one who was just a fearless warrior during the enslavement. So an international ancestor, and I'll begin with Nelson Mandela. So, and then say Ashe. Then the next thing we want you to have in your mind right now is a vision of one of our national ancestors, one who might have made a sacrifice that, directly impacted the name of our community and village today, like Frederick Douglass, Ashe.
Okay.
And then next, bringing it all the way down to the family unit. that centerpiece of our nation. Your family member who have passed away, whose name you want to think of right now, Ashe.
Ashe.
And then last, for our future, for those yet unborn who we struggle for to create a better world. We struggle today to create a better world for them in the future. Ashe, Ashe,
Ashe.
and Ashe.
Ashe.
Oh,
Ashe. Oh. Thank you, Brother Fred.
oh yeah.
I see Brother Miley is jumping on. Miley, can you hear me? You're on mute,
Yeah.
brother.
Yes, sir. I can hear what's happening, brothers.
All right. Good to have you,
Oh,
man.
brother,
Good
like that tie, sir.
Hey, man. I need to have a jacket on to match it, but it's just a little too hot up in this office right now.
Welcome to the broadcast, bro. Good to see you.
So, Miley,
Thanks,
I just wanted to allow you to jump in if you want to say a few words before we get started. We touched on back to our ancestors and kind of where Black Man Lab originated in your original thought process with Black Man Lab. So anything that you wanted to add?
Nah, brothers, let's jump into it, man. This is such an important topic in this moment, with our young people going through what they're going through, and all of us. And folks are just looking for answers, looking for opportunities to try to navigate these police encounters. So now I'm ready to jump in with good Gary Davis over there.
Yeah. So with that, man, I want to give our guests the opportunity to give themselves an introduction, and just give us a quick snippet of your background. And once we do that, we're going to go ahead and jump into it. So Miley mentioned it, brother Gary Davis. Give a quick intro.
How y'all doing, good brothers? As always, man, I am the 55th cousin of Maui, and I run the Next Level Boys Academy, man, and I'm just honored to be here tonight with you brothers. I know I've kind of been MIA, but it's no excuse. I think we're all busy, man, but just glad to be on the call tonight.
Good to have
awesome.
you.
Good to have you. Also, we have brother Doug Evans.
Thank you, bro, Marty. My name's Doug Evans. I'm with Let Us Make Man. Been working in a law enforcement capacity for over 20 years. So obviously nothing I say will be in line with any agencies that I may have worked for, solely the views of Doug Evans. And I'm just glad to be a part of Black Man Lab.
We are very happy, as always, brother Evans, to have you on, man. Mauli, I'm going to ask you just to give a little quick of you and what your experience has been, because I think in this particular instance and what we're dealing with, we want to get your insight on the topic matter at hand as well. So just give the people that who might not know who Mauli Mel Davis is, quick snippet of you.
Yeah, no, I think this is a really balanced and important group, because Gary works with so many young brothers who have had police encounters, and he really keeps his finger on the pulse of what's happening with these young brothers that are encountering law enforcement, that are moving, through the real life stuff. And then obviously Brother Doug, having the law enforcement experience, I come at it from two different perspectives. One is as an organizer of young Black men, and that being what I believe one of my missions in life, and having two Black sons that require constant talking to and navigation. But then also as both formerly a criminal defense attorney and a civil rights attorney. And the way we sue law enforcement often, probably weekly, maybe 2 or 3 times a month, but we sue police for using excessive force against people, or falsely arresting or imprisoning people. So those are really the way that the areas that we work in. And so when we also talk about the criminal defense perspective, I had a chance for about 12 years to do criminal defense work in a private practice. Some of it was indigent defense, some of it was retained, but I had opportunity to cross-examine law enforcement officers about searches, stops, their use of force in a criminal defense context as well. So that's how I'm coming at it, man. I'm looking forward to the conversation and us really taking a moment and hopefully giving some of the young people and their parents information that can be useful in this moment.
Thanks again, brother. With that, let's jump in. The topic today is interacting with the police, right? And this subject matter is kind of ironic. It really, when you use that phrase, interacting with the police, there's how most folks have to interact with the police, and then how we have to interact with the police as Black men. That's the question that I want to pose to the panel right now is, as we talk about interacting with the police, what should that look like in a perfect world, and then in the world that we currently live in? How do we talk to, as Maui talked about, how do we talk to our young black men about this subject matter? What would you say, Gary? You're on mute, Gary.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think you have Doug and Mao. These guys are experts in this field. But if I had to address something in the space that I work in, man, I think a lot of young men have to be fully educated on how a court proceeding could be an advantage if they can just live to get there. So I think we got to go back and just educate them on, okay, this is why you have to cooperate when the police stops you. I'm sure Brother Doug will get into that later on. When the police stops you, this is what you are to do. Also, I think it's important too, and what I'm seeing in the space that I work in, man, is to educate young men on what you do once you get to court. And I know a lot of young men who get jammed up, man. The first thing they want to do is not be honest with their family or with their parents. Well, I want to encourage you guys to be honest with your lawyer, if nobody else. So if you could just get through that police procedure, do everything, not everything he wants you to do, but do everything he expects you to do. And I'm sure just get us to a court day, man. Just live so that we can have a fair hearing for you. And when you get to court and you get that hearing, be honest and open with your lawyer. So that's one of the things I want to start off with. And as we go along, I'll have some more information to share.
Thanks, Brother Gary. Brother Doug?
Yeah, Brother Marty, that's a great question. I remember, in the words of Killer Mike, survive the encounter. And I think that's what Brother Gary was referring to. And I know that Let Us Make Man started doing a workshop that Brother Mowley helped put together called Law and Black Society. And another one was called Consequences. And pretty much it just dealt heavily with this verbal judo exchange that goes between the person getting stopped and the person doing the stopping. And so one of the things we want to remember is when we go, I went into one of my favorite eateries yesterday, Bro Marty, and man, the girl had an attitude behind the counter, man. So I went on, got my little food. I was cussing on the way out. But human beings work in different jobs. The difference is that these human beings have the power to use lethal force. And so they might have had a bad day. They got cussed out by the girlfriend. The supervisor got on them about something, or what happened with their children. We don't know when the blue lights are behind us, what spiritual or mental, emotional state the person is who's stopping us. So the best thing to do is to always talk with respect. And we cannot fight the court case. I think what Brother Gary was alluding to. Can't fight the court case on the street. You let Brother Mowley and those other attorneys, the Chris Leopolds and those people do that. Our job is to have those tools to survive the encounter.
Gotcha. Good advice. Brother Mowley?
Yeah, no, man. Both of, Gary and Doug are right on It's really, what we teach. We don't really try to equip young brothers to be street lawyers. That's not the objective. The objective is for them to know what their rights are. So we will tell them, don't consent to a search. And I think what Gary was referring to is there are certain expectations during a police encounter, but you don't trade that in. Saying, they pull you over if the young man is driving and gets pulled over, and they ask, you to step out of the vehicle. The law says you have to. And it can be for something as simple as a traffic stop. What we know about the way, police culture and really just American culture is that is latent and interwoven with white supremacy. And so every law enforcement, their white counterparts. Example, we get pulled over more often, disproportionately pulled over. When we get pulled over, disproportionately searched, arrested. If we go to court, more likely to receive a prison sentence, more likely to receive a longer sentence. And so that's the reality of this prison industrial complex. And so we have to talk about police encounters in that context, in this idea of, to be tough on crime is really to be tough on Black folk. And so we have to, realize that what the game is. And so part of, I think, the beauty of what Gary does with Next Level Boys Academy, that he's talking to young cats and in them about the real, and we can't make any excuses until we are able to see. We're going to continue to have to give our young people the talk. Keep your hands where they can be seen. Don't answer any questions that you're not asked. Just, be patient and be quiet. And, what we have going on in this moment of protest can make our young men and women emboldened to say, look, I'm not going to let you handle me any kind of way. Right. And there's obviously that the courage this generation has shown throughout these protests has been very powerful, admirable, and noble. A police encounter on a dark road in Georgia is a different thing. And we have to, again, encourage them to safely navigate that process so that we can see them again. And if it's a BS stop, if it's a BS search, if it's a BS arrest, we'll sue them. But give us a chance to sue them. I can't tell you how many families that we represent where they, wonder at times aloud, and sometimes they wonder, just kind of amongst themselves, what if my child did this differently? Because we always tend to blame the victim. Even in, when people look at Rayshard Brooks, they're like, well, if he didn't run, well, hell, George Floyd didn't run. That didn't save his life. And so because of the system that we're in, nothing that we tell these young brothers or sisters are foolproof, but we could just give them the best possible advice to be careful as they engage and to de-escalate. Now, that it is not the time to say, I know my rights. That's not what we're doing. Just if you know your rights, exert your rights. You don't have to tell nobody that you know them. You just exert your rights. Your right to remain silent, your right not to consent to a search. If you're asked to get out of the vehicle, you have to exit the vehicle. If they ask if they're going to pat you down, they get to pat you down. And it could be for something as simple as a tag light or a stop sign.
Yeah, man, I think, Molly, that point about de-escalation, man, is at a critical point. Just the young people, and it's unfortunate that they have to, in a lot of cases, carry the maturity level of where de-escalation requires, of a human being, right? Like being mature and being just where you're in a space where you're just trying to get to the next point in this encounter, as the brothers would say. But we have a question right now, and I'll put it out there for the panel. It says, how does the new law impact the encounters with the police? And I'm assuming the person who sent it is referring to the hate crimes law that passed in Georgia recently. So, Miley, you're an attorney, but anyone can address that question from the audience.
Yes. Again, I think we always have to do our analysis through the lens of struggle and movement work. And so what the new law not the hate crime law, but the law involving police, where they can sue you if you make a false allegation against them, if you make a claim of police brutality when there isn't one. That's all backlash. You understand? That's backlash for our young people staying in the street. They say, well, we can't control y'all in the street. Y'all too deep. You coming too strong. Your tactics are too unorthodox. We can't get ahead of you all. Y'all are doing protests in 3-4 different locations all over the Atlanta metro area. But what we can do, because we control this courthouse, because we control the Capitol, that is, we can change laws to try to punish you. And so that's all this law is. I'd encourage people to look it up. I think this House bill, I want to say, is 838, but I have to pull it up. But we got to look at it, analyze it. Obviously the concern is that it also adds an additional penalty for an assault against police officers. And the law is aggravated assault, and these other laws, they're strong enough. What examples do we have that would have warranted the new law? What have people been doing to police since the legislative break due to COVID-19 and the return? What has happened to police? Have they been getting shot and beaten and murdered? No. So there's the only reason that they put this forward is they want to draw a line in the sand and say, if you all are trying to stand up for your rights, we're going to pass a law that shows the whole world that we are law and order, and we're going to maintain the status quo. And we're saying the status quo is dead. We can never return to normal. Normal had us in a very bad way.
Brother Doug, you want to take a shot just from your perspective, not just within the recent law, but just your perspective as a Black father who's a member of Let Us Make Man and working to save these young men. What do you tell your son? Gary Davis, what do you tell your son? Go ahead, Brother Doug.
Yeah, that's a valid question, Brother Fred. I know, to the point where with even the question about the hate crime law, I would tell little Doug, we can't sue if you dead. I mean, we can sue, but you won't get anything from it. And so we have so many parents that are grieving, and they really will never be able to kiss their son again or hug their child again, but they can still go and get civil damages. So at the end of the day, we hope not to have to call a Miley Davis or Attorney Stewart in these type of situations. But it seemed like they're becoming more normal. I remember my son was in a high rent district after school one day, and I'm picking him up late, Brother Fred. And, they love the hoodies, man. They had, he had the hoodie on. It was probably 90 degrees, but he had on a hoodie. And he had on a book bag, which Brother Gary could look like the tools of a car thief, somebody breaking in. And at that particular time in this community, they were cracking down on vandals and larceny. And so he got stopped, profiled. The white officer gave him the business. And my son, being a little privileged, he got indignant, like, how dare you? He didn't realize, nah, bro, they don't care nothing about where your daddy worked. They don't even know you like that.
Right.
And so to get back to Miley's point, I had to talk with him. I thought that the talk probably would have come earlier, but I dropped the ball. And I waited till something happened when it meant something to him.
Wow.
And he had to listen. So I had to go and dig into the Davis Bozeman card where it tells you what to do when your Fourth Amendment is being infringed on. I had to go over the hands, hands up if you're driving or you're riding with somebody. And if you're walking like you were walking, answer the questions. What is your name and where you live? Anything else? Don't let them intrude on your Fourth Amendment. But he was emotionally scarred from it. Right. And it provided a good daddy-son moment.
Wow. Brother Gary, I know Gary Davis Jr. I know Junior.
Yeah, man. He actually had an encounter with the police department on the south side of town, man, just south of Fulton County. And they profiled him, man. They pulled him over. First thing they do, what they say, I smell weed, which gives them probable cause to search your car. But the interesting thing about it is when they did it, I think he had just turned 17 or 18, and they stuck his face in an ant bed, man. It was 2 white cops, and this happened around the time the brother out of Minneapolis was shot and killed on Facebook Live or something like that a few years ago.
Castile, yeah.
But you know, one of the things, Maui and these brothers have done a tremendous job at Let Us Make Man with the the engaging with the police officers. But here's how, just talking to my son, and I want the young men that's listening to this call to hear this. One of the things that I did, and I didn't know I did this, and this is very, very critical, especially for young and young adults, Black and brown boys, males, is that you gotta know and understand conflict resolution, man. So I was teaching conflict resolution pretty much all their lives so that, you shouldn't be easily set off. Because with a lot of these cops, man, they are, when they're pulling them over, man, their thing is, I just want to set him off. Well, first of all, the blue lights are already intimidating. So we're all going on guard, even adult men. But conflict resolution, man, do what they expect you to do. Because when you do what they ask you to do, they're going to say it in a nasty way. They're going to be rude. They're going to be intimidating. So that's why when I say do what they expect you to do, you already know they expect you to have your driver's license. So it's already have that out. So now you already up on one. You're already going to know where you're going, where are you heading. Sir, why is that important? Sir, if I can just get you to write me the ticket so I can go on. So I think a lot of these things, man, it's just teaching conflict resolution. But them cops down in Fayette County, man, they profiled him. They followed him. Man, they made his life miserable. They were rubbing their hands through the carpet of his car. And they said to him, if I find a seed in here, because I think it was a summer that my son was heading to college to play football. And he said, if I find a seed in here, I'm going to ruin your life. And man, he said they spent 30 minutes looking for a seed in his car, man. But the whole time, he said they had him on the ground. They walked him over there where the ant bed was, man. And it was crazy. And the thing about it is he had his license out, of course. And this is how they get these young men to search their vehicles. Those who don't know, I smell marijuana, and it gives them probable cause. And that's not what it is, man. They just thinking now, especially in Fayette County, because there's not a lot for Black and brown boys to do down there. So right now they're looking for weed. Their biggest task force is weed, man. So I just think we got to teach these young men, specifically our sons, conflict resolution, because most cops, I think they purposely try to set people off just to check their temperament. Because if they don't get you on anything, they know you're going to get aggressive, possibly run, possibly flee. But man, just sit there and let us get to court. It's the only thing that I ask of them.
Thanks, Brother Gary. You guys just said a whole lot there. One of the things that stuck out to me and what we were just discussing is the reality that, Brother Doug, you touched on it, that your son is privileged, and I'm doing that in air quotes, to a degree, right? And we as, Black men we're all doing okay, But the reality of it is that whether you are low income as a Black man, middle income, high income, come from a really good family, whatever, we're all in the same bucket, right? When it comes to addressing the police addressing us, it happens the exact same. It doesn't matter if I have dreads, tats, or whatever. And I'm saying this from experience, that as a Black man in a suit, I've been on the ground face down. And fortunately, I had the wherewithal to, I asked questions. Of course, I was angry, but I asked questions of, what did I do wrong? Okay, I'm cooperating. I just want to know what I did wrong. I didn't fight back, got through it all. And of course, they said they had the wrong person. That's how it got resolved. But that happens all the time. So you think about a young man who is not of that same mindset, right, that I was at that time. Somebody who's not mature enough to have that conversation that way and be able to manage through it. And you wind up with situations like Elijah McClain. That story of this young man in Colorado losing his life for going to the store, right? He went to the store and he's going home, did absolutely nothing wrong and winds up dead. Those kind of scenarios are the ones that concern me and the ones that I'm trying to figure out. And this is my own personal thing now, trying to figure out, how do we navigate that? What do you think is the resolve to that? How do we get through the perfectly innocent kid who's done nothing, did absolutely nothing, now no criminal record, didn't run from anybody, just questioned and said, hey, I'm an introvert. I don't deal well with these situations of people putting their hands on me, and talk through it and try to talk through it himself and winds up dead. What do you think is our resolve to that? Because those kind of situations happen all the time. Think about the amount of, we're fortunate right now in a way in that a lot of this stuff is getting videotaped, right? But think about all of that hasn't been videotaped or isn't being videotaped, that occurs, and these people just get away with murder. And that's at the end of the day, that's what's happening. They're getting away with murder. How do we manage that? What do you guys think about that?
Man, that's why we have to stay in the street. That's why these young people have to continue to protest. That's why this country has to be changed at its deepest level. Think about the conversation we're having right now. We should be deeply, deeply saddened by it.
Mm-hmm.
And think about Gary Davis, man. This is a good man, college educated, God-fearing, good husband, good father, has helped raise a bunch of men, and his son gets handled like that. Doug Evans, good father. I mean, this really, man, when we process what we're saying, the shit that we have to tell our children, bro, it's crazy. I mean, it's just crazy. It's heartbreaking for me to have to tell my sons who go away to college at Howard University, for me to have to worry about them. Not because I think they're going to go out and do anything bad to someone else, but because I think I don't know what these folks are willing to do to them, because we've seen what this system is capable of. That's why I'm a revolutionary. That's why. I mean, I got to fight until this thing changes or until I die, because if not, we're going to continue to have these conversations. We don't have agency. We don't have control over our own children's lives. And they literally, as you described, they get away with murder. Man, Charlie Tilson was having a mental health breakdown. They lock him in a damn jail, and they put him in solitary confinement for 9 freaking days, and he dies of dehydration. I mean, it was just barbaric. His life was worth so little to the black and white officers in that jail. You can go, I mean, we could just run the roll call of how little our lives are valued in this system. That's why we have to change the system. That's why you can't tinker with it. The stuff that happens down at the state capitol, we're trying to get some relief, but we tinkering. We tinkering around the edges of white supremacy. We've got to root it out in order for our children to be safe. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, that's our responsibility as black men, as any human being, to secure your family And in America right now, our families are not secured. And then, so that's why I wish I could just go like other lawyers and just go practice law for the art of it and the love of it. And man, I'm having to practice like a guerrilla warfare. I mean, my days are extended into the night because we trying to organize to get out of this situation because I know the system too well. And it's not broken. It's working the way it was designed to work. It's always been designed to control Black bodies, Black lives, our existence, our minds. That's what the whole system has been created to, so that they can maintain the status quo. And it is frustrating, man. It's frustrating. And I apologize for cursing earlier. It's just frustrating because I know the men that are on this call, and when they tell the stories of what happened to their sons, man, that's crazy. And then those officers are still on the force.
Right.
They're still
Right.
So Miley, I mean, I think to your point though, just the guerrilla warfare mentality of brothers coming at it in whatever profession they're in. You know what I mean? And just as an educator, same mentality. How many times have I had to close the door? Our brother King Walker fired for doing the right thing, guerrilla warfare in the classroom. And so, those conversations, man, and the work that we do, but I think the inspiration that comes out of the lab from just hearing from men who, frankly, are upstanding citizens and leaders in the community have these crazy stories about their sons' encounters with people who are supposed to protect and serve. So, I just would love for us to now kind of address, we got a question that's been holding from YouTube that shifts us a little bit, but not too far off the topic. But it says, if you are licensed to carry and the weapon is not on your person and in your glove box, do you tell the officer that you have a weapon in your vehicle? So I'd like for Doug to hit that from the law enforcement side, and then maybe mildly touch it from the legal representation, and then Gary just jump in where your experience leads you. Go ahead, brother Doug.
Yeah, brother, I've heard great attorneys like Brother Miley say that you should disclose. I personally, particularly if it's a regular traffic stop, obviously you don't know what it's going to escalate to, but Gary makes a great point when he talked about the smell of marijuana being a reason for search, and you see that a lot. But if it's just a normal traffic stop, broken tail light, failure to obey the traffic device, why is the weapon an issue? And so sometimes you coming from Washington Road, they're gonna ask, you coming from the trap? What are you doing over here? It's late at night. Then these probing questions are coming. If it's late at night, the dome light should be on, the hand should be at 10s and 2s. And like Gary said, have the license and insurance ready. So if that's a traffic stop, I have no need to tell you as a concealed carry, and I don't have to have that just to have it in my vehicle. Now, if I'm a convicted felon, it's going to be some problems. Or if I have some psychological issue or domestic violence charges. But if I'm legally entitled to have that weapon, and Miley may give more of a legal reason, but I think what happens is three things, Brother Fred, when you're stopped. I've been stopped, and when you see them troopers, man, that heart stop pumping. You're like, damn, I got on a uniform and I'm scared. And three things happen with African-American men, and I'm sure other cultures. Three emotions, physiological things happen because of the emotions of being stopped, where you have a distrust of the officer, you have resentment of the officer, and you fear that officer. And so physically now, you're sweating. So though you may have a weapon in the glove box, the officer's approaching you on either one side or the other of the vehicle. You're not talking all correctly now. You're scared. You're breathing heavy. You're trying to get your mind right because you don't want to be the next victim on channel 2. And so for me, I'm only going to address, and that's what I teach my son, I'm only going to address the traffic stop. Officer, may I, you tell me, mind telling me why I was pulled over, and keep it relevant to the traffic stop. So the weapon at that point, in my opinion, and I'm not an attorney, but in my opinion, I don't want to escalate it. We've seen the situation where the young man was being told the officer he had a concealed carry permit.
Philando Castile.
Castile, and he reaches to get his documentation, which is why I love what Gary said, have it already, because just scratching your underarm may be seen as a threatening gesture. And if you scared as an officer because you don't want to take that butt whipping or you don't want to get drawn down on first, then you see that fear come out and shooting someone that's unarmed. So for me, I'm not escalating it to anything other than a traffic stop.
And I agree with Doug. Legally, you have no obligation to disclose. Now, if the officer asks, is there a firearm in the vehicle? Then I think you're honest about it, and you should be honest about it. Yes, I can tell you exactly where the firearm is. And I think one of the things that we have to do is that we have to teach our young people to over communicate. When you're in that situation, it's not the time to be mumbling and stumbling. You have to do your very best to be very articulate. Officer, you've asked me whether or not there's a firearm. My hands are on the steering wheel. There is a firearm. I am licensed to carry. My hands are still on the steering wheel, and that firearm is in the glove box. My hands are still on the steering wheel. Would you like to see my permit? My permit is in my right back pocket. So we have to walk the officers through that level of conversation. And those interactions are not the time to be flippant. It's not the time to play, but you're playing with, you don't know what is on that officer's mind, so I don't make, I'm not cracking no jokes. I'm serious as a heart attack, and I'm just trying to talk through, here's the situation, here's what I have. If you ask me, I'll tell you. But I agree with Doug. I think Philando Castile almost is a lesson to us all. Don't volunteer information, and you don't know. And that's the thing. It's the taking of Black lives is so arbitrary with law enforcement. You could say, well, don't do that, but then we'll give you an example of somebody not doing that and still getting killed. You you can't sleep in your bed. Breonna Taylor's murdered sleeping in her bed. So, it's all we can do is give the best, as they say, best practices, try to de-escalate, give our young people the confidence to be able to speak clearly about what they're going through, and, encourage them, as everyone I think has said, just get home. We'll sue them later. We'll file a complaint against them. We'll document it. But it's not, you can't win a battle for the race for our people on the side of the road when they've got you pulled over.
Gary, you want to chime in there?
Man, I don't know. I think they covered it all. I think that the key is just educating them. I know Maui indicated that, asking permission, can I go in my back pocket to get the information that you need? But again, I think if we're being proactive, as soon as you see the blue light, first of all, I don't know if this is possible, that you can drive in a place that's safe before you can pull over so people can witness this at a very low speed that doesn't come off to be, a threat that you're about to put the cop on a high-speed chase. And as you're doing this, man, I always say, and there's a young man that asked me in class the other day, maybe I need to ask Maui or Doug this while we're on this live, is that when the cops come, does he have to roll his window all the way down as long as his information is out the window? And I didn't know the answer to that. I said, you might want to talk to some cops or some attorneys about that, because it's enough room in there to hand it out. To hand the information. But man, I think what I did, the thing that fears me the most, and I've been following the protests. I think Maui's got these young people on fire. Even got my son, who was never in that space, trying to, willing to get into that space with what's going on. But man, what fears me the most, I don't know if there's a right or wrong way to do things. It's just a situation where you just may catch a cop, man, that's in a bad mood. Or you may catch that white boy who's been getting his ass kicked every day in high school by a black kid and can't wait till he get that badge and retaliate. You know what I'm saying? So man, it's just, I know we can give all these best practices, man, but at the end of the day, we're gonna have to address this very screening process to become a police officer. We got to evaluate, dig deep, and see their background, what's their motives, man. Because as I'm listening on this call, man, I know for a fact, Maui, I educated my son to do everything he was supposed to do, and that white boy still stuck his face in the ant bed, man. So you're thinking, what can we do? So all we can do is just continue to coach, man. But my thing is get his information out there. You ain't even got to get into what you stopped me for, man. Just give me the ticket and I can get going so that I can get to my attorney, get to my family and fight this case, man. Because I'm teaching my sons, man, don't get into all this while you pull me over. Get the ticket and go. Let's get out of there. All this, what you stopped me for, that's not fair. But the thing that bothers me the most is that every young man in Next Level Boys Academy has been profiled with this thing, I smell weed, and they buried them on that, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's G, you on it, man. That's the running situation. Here's the thing. Legally, do you have to roll your window all the way down? No. Why would but I guess if we are teaching de-escalation and they said let your window down, and then you only let it down a crack. No, all you doing is pissing them off, right?
And
they looking to be like, all right, what is he trying to hide? Because what they're not internalizing is the fear for our safety that we really truly have. They come up thinking you shouldn't be tripping if you didn't do anything wrong. No, I'm tripping because you got me pulled over and you have my life in your hands. And so that has me tripping, not the fact that I'm doing any dirt, but I'm just concerned. And so the answer to the question is no, you don't have to let it all the way down. But I think by not letting it down, you creating a tension. And then the other piece that I think G is the smell of marijuana. And so there are things that we should be doing for real. We've got to decriminalize marijuana, period, point blank. It really gave this war on drugs. When Trump came into office, he ratcheted the mass incarceration back up. Like, it was clear, and it's clear to the whole world. Right now, we got 2.2 million people in the United States that are incarcerated, 2.2 million. 60% of them are people of color. 40% of them are Black. I mean, that stuff is staggering. And so, I like what Reverend Warnock describes. He says for that kind of mass incarceration, there has to be some police brutality. If you're arresting that many people, it's a byproduct of excessive force is a byproduct of mass incarceration. It's just a part of it because there's all these increased interactions. There's all of these attempts to get people locked up for little petty stuff. Rayshard Brooks, man, they should have took that brother home. Took him home.
Yeah.
We have a case in Henry County, McDonough police. They paralyzed our guy from running from him, but we found in the officer's file where they took the white boy home. He was drunk as a skunk, passed out drunk, and they put him in the car. They took him home, and it's just a difference in how different folks are policed, and it's real. And it has consequences,
Hey, Molly, I got a question also, but Dan, I'm going to come to you with the question, Molly. But somebody put in here that they want you to grab one of those cards and just give us what's on the back of those cards you used to print. That's in the chat. And then Doug, looks like this is from Ken Love Sr. It says, from a law enforcement perspective, if the window is tinted and it is night, roll the window down because he or she is going to be defensive because they cannot see in the car, or will use a cracked window as an excuse to say he or she couldn't hear. So that was from Ken Love. Doug, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I just want to say, hey, Gary, if they say they don't want to roll that window down, he better say, I'm scared of getting COVID. Also, I don't want to get you germs. I don't want to get you. Just, you know, think on the fly. But
that's a good out nowadays, Doug.
I wanted to add something to it, and Miley didn't hit on it. I'm sure many of his clients have been charged with this, who got that, you know, probable cause search for the marijuana smell, but obstruction. You know, an officer, you get, especially some of these officers maybe right out of the military, and then they're patrolling an African American community. They didn't go to school with us, you know, and so now they have this authority sense. I gave you a direct order. And now you see these obstruction charges where there may not have been any other probable cause to get a search or get you out of the vehicle or stop you. So when you don't consent to even something as simple as rolling down a window, you didn't obey a direct order, you know, and now that becomes the charge, and then everything else comes from that.
Yeah, and brothers, we just got a communication from a brother who has 10 of his mentees watching. He wants us to move a little bit away from the car, but just transition to where young men hanging out with friends and potentially interacting they can face in doing so. And this is from one of our mentors, Xavier Varner. Thanks for your question, Xavier.
Thanks, Xavier. Appreciate you, brother. Good to see you, man. So police interaction on foot or in person is different from being pulled over. In order to be pulled over, they have to have a reasonable, articulable suspicion, basically probable cause of why they are pulling you over. Either you ran a stoplight, you didn't have your tag light, you didn't have your lights on, you were speeding, you were weaving. They have to have that as an explanation. Walking down the street and a police officer walks up on you, there are two things that can happen. The officer can initially engage you, and when they engage you, they can ask you questions. Now, the question is do you have to respond? And the answer is, it depends. So if they say, hey, man, something just happened down the street, and you say, and this is what we teach, we say, officer, I don't know anything about what you're talking about. Am I free to go? That's important language. Am I free to go? Because the officer then has to make the decision, do they have a basis to detain you, right? And if they have a basis to detain you, once they say, no, you're not free to go, then you have to stand there. Then you ask the question, officer, am I under arrest, right? So we can teach this language. Everything has a vocabulary. Every, you know, if you play basketball and they're gonna put you in a diamond and one, that's a vocabulary, right? You have to learn a vocabulary to be able to play the game successfully. It's the same way when you're engaging law enforcement. What's the vocabulary? And then they say, well, can I search you? Then your response is, I do not consent to a search. Use that language. Don't be saying, nah, homie. No, sir, I do not consent to a search. So can they pat the outside of your clothing? Yes, they can, because for officer safety, they can do what's called a Terry Frisk pat down to determine whether or not you have a weapon that might hurt or harm them. And so they get to do that. So I think when we talk about those in-face encounters, you have to know the language. Officer comes up, you ask the question, officer, I really don't have anything to say to you. No disrespect, but am I free to go? No, you're not free to go. Well, officer, am I under arrest? No, you're not under arrest. I'm detaining you for investigation purposes. Okay. Officer, I don't have anything to say to you without an attorney. And then the final, can I search you? Officer, I do not consent to a search. And then they still pat the outside of your clothing. And then you ask again, am I free to go? So I think that's some of the language that our young people can use, and you got to practice it. And I think role playing, Brother Xavier, with the young brothers, doing some role playing, because, you know, when you get in that moment, it's like you can think about shooting a jump shot as much as you want to, but you got to be out there shooting it. So when it's game time, it's automatic. Wow, you shoot it. It's the same way when you're interacting with law enforcement. You have to have yourself prepared. Okay, if I get pulled over, if I get encountered, here's how I'm going to deal with it. And I prepared myself for that.
Love it. Brother Doug, you want to touch that a little bit for the mentees watching when you're on foot with the brothers?
Yeah, I love what Attorney Mowley said about that, because a lot of times young men hanging in a particular area, grandmama might have called because she's, been retired for 20 years and she see these young men hanging out. We remember the case that happened in Clayton County about a week ago when the young men were walking, and I think they had a BB weapon or something, a BB gun or something like that. And so we see our young men hanging out. There's no school. Even when school was in, they was out of school. And so they're going to be hanging out. And if they're hanging out in groups, I think that's a very educational point for Brother Xavier, because they could be deemed a gang, or they could be deemed loitering, or they could be deemed as some type of larceny that's going to take place. So one of the things that I commonly think about that, Brother Fred, is what type of situation is going to happen when they come up on those young men. How are the young men going to de-escalate it? Because what Mowley brings to my mind is what is reasonable. So if I'm being detained, the language is so crucial with Mowley saying, because you can't be like, no, player, you can't search me. When I was in college, we got pulled over and I knew, hey, don't consent to a search. So the officer started searching and we had to, no, we do not consent to a search. We had to be very, very clear. And so when you're being detained, and I'm going to piggyback this back off of Mowley, what is reasonable for young men to be detained? Is there a time where they're going to go get dogs, or they're going to come back and, well, you don't fit the description according to radio dispatch 30 minutes in, or we're going to put his son, like what happened with Gary's son, in the ant pile? What is reasonable amount of being detained? Obviously, if he's not being arrested, he's free to go. So when he's being detained, so many crucial things go wrong, Brother Fred, when those young men may not know those Fourth Amendment rights. So exactly. I love that Xavier is going to hopefully do the role play, as Mowley suggests. But what is reasonable in being detained?
Thank you, brother. Go ahead, Mowley.
Yeah, it's crazy. The Supreme Court has deemed these different times in terms of reasonable, and I have to go back and look at them. These are search and seizure issues, in terms of holding them long enough to get the dogs to come and do, sniff. And then once they sniff, we've had cases where they find nothing on the side of the road. They take the client back and they strip search them, So of course we do what we do. We sue their ass. And we're able to recover for them, because there was just no basis. I think there's a question about where you can find this language. What I'll do is, if you go to our website, we should have in case you're stopped by police on the firm website, davisbozeman.com, davisbozeman.com. There we've had in the past a printable card where you could click a PDF and print it and put it in your wallet. We've had fold over cards. We have magnets that you can put on your refrigerator, because we know, we've been having those cards, 15, 16 years,
I still have mine.
Right. And we keep,
it's in my wallet on the fridge.
Yeah, put one on the fridge, so we got the magnet, and then put one in the put the fold over in your wallet. So what we'll do is, I'll talk to my law partner. We're going to produce some more of those and just start passing them out. And we should be passing them out at protests. Gary, I really kind of slipped on that, man. We need to be just giving them out at protests, making sure people know what their rights are. So we'll do that, man. We got some real soldiers here in terms of people who, just don't practice law for the money, but practice it for as warriors and legal warriors, and try to, prayerfully move in the tradition of a Chokwe Lumumba, of a Johnny Cochran, of Constance Baker Motley, of Charles Hamilton Houston. Those are the folks who they were change agents. You know what I'm saying? They weren't just, I'm about to make a whole bunch of money. Of course, we do trying to do that as well, but we owe our community so much, man. Kwame Ture, whose birthday just passed, talked about what we owe to the masses of our people. What did our people do for us to be able to have a law firm on the south side of town in South DeKalb? How many floors got washed? How many insults got taken? How many people got beat down for us to be able to do what we do? All of us, you know. So we owe the masses everything.
And you're absolutely right, Molly. And of course, that's why we do the work of, you do your work in terms of Davis Bozeman Law, and then these other brothers on here doing their work as leaders for the community and Black Man Lab as well. One of the things that I wanted to touch on and make sure that we talk about all that we've been talking about the front end, right, in terms of our young Black men or Black men in general having these interactions and how to deal with the interactions. But we know from experience that even in the best of those situations, stuff goes bad. So let's talk a little bit about the means of digging deep into institutional racism, which is and white supremacy, which is the infrastructure for allowing these things to happen, right? That's what allows these things to happen. And I think a big piece of that we have to discuss is the qualifications for the law enforcement officers, the laws that are in place and policies that are in place that affect us, and how do we look to make these different things change outside of just voting? Because of course voting is important, but what else do you guys think are the means of making that happen? Because we still have these issues, right? Even at the best of scenarios that our young folks know how to read the back of that card. How do we deal with the real problem, right? We're putting a Band-Aid on a real problem. How do we deal with that?
I'll take a piece of that, Brother Marty. Every time you see Miley Davis on the news, you know it's coming. And it's a joke in law enforcement. The bigger your SOPs, the more lawsuits you had. And so every time there's a Miley that takes someone to court on procedures or not following procedures correctly, or maybe the procedures need to be revamped, then new SOPs or new standard operating procedures will come out. The big key to your question, Martin, I think it's a brilliant question. It's really at the crux of where we are. And I think the young people, particularly in Atlanta and in Milwaukee and other places, have moved the conversation to police business is going to be different. Yep. And I think what we're going to see is the days of the old cracking heads, verbal judo, and with verbal judo, if they coming at you with a fist, then you got to escalate 2 steps past the fist, and so here come the aspartame or the OC gas or something worse. It's going to go, Brother Marty, into, I think, social science. So you're going to see a lot. I think agencies are going to be hiring a lot more sociologists, to work on these cases in the community, because the way we have policed culturally, and we can look at the history of police, even in Atlanta, when we got the first Black officers in 1948, 1947, the Klan still ran the union of the Atlanta Police Department. And so even the culture of policing has to change.
And they still do.
For that to change, you got to change the way we do policing. So I think you're going to see more social scientists. And when you talked about the brothers with mental issues, it's mandatory now for everyone to do crisis intervention training. But the mindset of the old ways still is what gets out of the police car. And so you're going to see even that taken more seriously with mental people that are having a mental episode, people that are on drugs, or people who are just not cooperating or complying. The standard operating procedure can't be, I'm gonna just shoot them. So it's gonna have to change, Marty, or there are gonna be a lot more lawsuits all over the country and a lot more protests all over the country.
Roger that. Anybody else want to jump in on that? Miley, Gary?
I think when the more I'm beginning to see this, the police shootings and the brutality and all this, I often wonder, why is it that being a police officer is one of the few positions that you're hired and there's not a community level that puts you in a place of accountability? You know, when you are working in a school, you know, you get a chance to meet your principal, your teacher. When you have a mayor, you have say in who becomes your mayor. You have say into who becomes a city councilman. You probably have say at a zoning committee who is allowed to build a business in your community. But why is it that when you become a police officer, that this is a very, very important, critical position or role to play in protecting people, but there's no community involvement to have say in what this looked like or who this person is? You know, why doesn't the community have an opportunity to get in on meetings and with law enforcement meetings or voice your opinion until somebody's murdered, and then you get that meeting with a captain or a chief or whatever? I just think my concern right now is the evaluation piece. What does it take to become a cop? And even with that, why doesn't the community have any say in who's going to protect their community? Why are they not involved in those conversations? Why are they not even involved? Why isn't a homeowners association involved in the interviewing process to allow this cop to police their community? And that's just my thing, man. You know, I deal with black and brown boys, so y'all are all out of my lane. So I just hope that made sense, man.
It makes complete sense. And what you're saying there, Brother Gary, is essential and crucial. You're right. There's no point of checks and balances on, you know, realistically, anybody can become a cop, right? And that's not to belittle the position, but realistically, anybody can become a cop. And the amount of power that is put in a police officer's hands, we know it, right? We see it, and we're having this conversation right now about it, which is, you know, when you really put it in perspective, it's ridiculous that we have to have these conversations the way that we have to have them, right? So what you're saying, Brother Gary, is absolutely important. And I think that that's something, as we look to legislation or whatever you want to call it down the road, has to be addressed. You know, the level of training that these people have, and then what gets them the job in the first place. Background checks, the whole thing. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Neely Fuller says that if you don't understand white supremacy, everything else you think you know will only confuse you. And so I think our analysis of our educational system, of law enforcement, of media, of economics, of everything, has to be viewed through this lens of understanding white supremacy. And I'm in here with my brother Nate Beeman, one of our paralegals, and he's in the room, and he said, man, Neely Fuller says, don't call them police, call them what they are: race soldiers. Wow. I say, so I would encourage us to, let's take a look at Neely Fuller and see what he lays out in terms of breaking that down. One of my teachers and friends and comrades, Natsu Saito, has a book out, and she really challenges it, some of what we're even saying about our ability to make change, that legislation and voting and all of those things have some bearing. But what we've seen with Trump is that everything that was in place through executive order, you can come and attack and break down everything. You have, healthcare that, would have that helps people of color and all people, but it would help us. He's attacking. You had immigration, so he attacks our Muslim brothers and sisters. He attacks our Latino brothers and sisters, and so it has its limitations. And so we have to be talking about self-determination and how do we deconstruct white supremacy and rid the world in this country of white supremacy as a system. And that's a tough conversation. And here's the thing, and I'll be quiet, is that the work that Gary Davis does, the work that a Keith Lewis does, when what we're trying to do is save enough lives so that we continue to have soldiers who can continue to fight for our people. But those are programs that we're trying to catch them. And at the same time, we also have to be waging our own battle against taking this system down so that they're not caught up in it, right? A majority of the problem will be solved for our young people if they did not have to labor under a system of white supremacy. And so we got to deconstruct that. And we have to, at the same time, while it exists, we got to help them navigate it. And so that's the importance of I think these dual fronts that we're warring on, where we're building institutions and at the same to save our children, and at the same time we're trying to deconstruct a system that has been built to oppress us.
Yeah, Kwame Nkrumah said we got to create liberated zones, man, in this thing until we can push all of the white supremacy off the coast. But yeah, so brothers, I mean, just brilliant analysis. And Gary Davis, brother, you here because you're a dad, and I know your story, bro. So yeah, never slight your presence. Love what you brought to it. And tonight, brothers, just let me say quickly that, you know, the queue is live. There are plenty of questions. And so, you know, we're going to try to get to all of them. I wanted to remind the listeners and viewers that Attorney Davis did drop in the queue or in the chat that the name of the bill that we referred to earlier was HB 838. And this is the addition of law enforcement as a protected class. It creates the new offense of bias-motivated intimidation. I will say that again. Bias-motivated intimidation of a first responder, meaning police, firefighters, and paramedics. So please check that out at legis.ga.gov for more information. Go ahead, Brother Marty. I know you had another question or question you wanted to get to.
Yeah. So, before we jump to that, our brother Fred and brother Doug, are you all able to hang on for a bit, or you guys? I know you guys had another call you had to get on.
Yeah, man, we're excited tonight. You know, we bringing in the next class of Let Us Make Man scholars, Brother Miley. We spoke to 20 last night, and of our jihad scholars, and we're speaking to our Let Us Make Man scholars, book scholars tonight. So Brother Doug is our chair, and so we definitely need him present on that call.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep rolling. Normally, right about now, we'd be wrapping up, but this topic is so important and I think so meaningful for us as well as all the people listening that we want to continue to carry it on for a little bit here, and then still get to the stuff that we normally wrap up with. So, with that, we talked about you know, the institutional racism. We talked about that being the backdrop for everything. I think what we want to touch on a little bit more is how do we impact the organizations that are out there? How do we coalesce all these different organizations to better help to make the change, right? I think right now with where the climate is at right now, we have a good opportunity to do that. What are you all's thoughts on that?
Doug, you want to jump in, man? I know you're going to have to go in a minute. I did see a question from Brother Derek Bailey about driving into a lit area. And I think it was mentioned before by Gary about our ability to do that. And so what we encourage is that if you are in a dark area and police are attempting to pull your vehicle over and you don't feel comfortable, that you slow, you put on your hazards, and that you call 911 and you let them know that I am currently at this location. I'm being pulled over. Can you please alert the officer that I'm just trying to get into a better lit area? And, you know, you do it that way to try to put them on notice, and you stop as soon as you can, where you feel comfortable. So, you know, it's not one of those situations where you get to drive 20 miles to try to find, you know, a good, safe Black community. You like, and there's a Black neighborhood we can pull up into. Nah, you can't do all of that. But I do think it's not unreasonable if you put those hazards on, call 911 and say, please communicate to the officer behind me that I'm just trying to pull over into a lit area. I've reduced my speed down to, 20 miles an hour. So I'm not trying to run away from them. So I just wanted to get that one in. And I think there was a question about stop and frisk. So of course, New York had stop and frisk where you just stop them and just pat them down. And it's just total violation of people's rights. And it was, again, something that they even acknowledged was race-based. Your man that was running for president for a hot second, when those videos and audios came out, he was like, yeah, we should be doing this, and it's about controlling, as it always has been. If you look at even the Black Panther Party, 1966, the seventh demand of the 10-point program was a immediate end to police brutality. So this isn't a new conversation. It's just that more of it is being recorded. So I hope that was helpful.
All right. I'm looking through here. We got a couple of other questions I think that came through, Molly. I just want to make sure we didn't miss anything. Had a question about how about the cop that ripped the brother's window off and then dragged him out of the car. Did anybody see this case or know of this case?
I haven't seen that one, but if they ask you to step out of the car, you have to. And it could be for the most minor infraction because the justification is officer safety. Because if there's a gun in the vehicle, the idea is step out of the car. I'm going to pat you down. Those are all things that have been deemed lawful. And so I don't think, so we just need, and that's important. The other thing that people tend to try not to do is sign the ticket, y'all. You signing a ticket doesn't mean you're pleading guilty. It only means that you're going to show up for court. And if you don't sign the ticket, then there's no guarantee that you'll show up for court. Then they can put you under arrest. And so we've had cases where there was a refusal to sign the ticket. They wouldn't let the window down. So they bust the window, drag the woman out. She gets cut being dragged out of the window. And there is no civil rights violation in that situation. And this was for a stop sign. So I think, we just can't move off of myths. We have to know the law if we're going to try to exert our rights.
So the bottom line on that subject is, so I think everybody needs to hear that, because there's always this question of, do I have to get out the car if they ask you to get out the car? So what you're saying is unequivocally, you get asked that question, you got to get out.
Yeah. And they don't have to tell you why they pulled you over. There is not a case on the books that says they have to tell you why you pulled you over. We think it's good policing. We think it's good community policing to say, hey, I'm pulling you over because of this. But some of these people, they're not interested in community policing. They're interested in, again, controlling you, punking you, and doing what they want to do. And so, so I think, those are the kind of things that we probably should provide a list of all of the misnomers, in the myth. Do they have to read you your rights? No, they don't have to read you your rights unless they're questioning you and you're in custody.
And that's why I say, man, just get the ticket and let's go, man. So we can call somebody and deal with this. Just get the ticket. It doesn't matter what they pull. If it was crazy, if it was a lie, we're going to get to the bottom of it, man. Get the ticket, man, and get to the house. So listen to all you young brothers and sisters that listen to this call. If you get pulled over, we are hoping that you could get this ticket and call Maui or somebody, man. We got you from there. That's all I got to say, man. I can afford a ticket. And if I can, I got multimillionaires on this call that can. Man, just get the ticket and get home. And why you do this, why you do that, don't get caught up in this power struggle with somebody who has a badge and a gun, okay? So, and it's hopefully it's just their bad night, man. So I just want you home, man. Get a ticket and go.
Right. Absolutely. Fight another day, right? Brothers, I got one more question, and then I think we should probably look to wrap it up with our normal traditions, here's a quick question. Differences between loitering and just hanging out. Is there a difference there?
No, because again, loitering is one of those very subjective as to what loitering is. You basically are in a place and you're not conducting any business and you're hanging out. And so obviously if a shop owner or someone who owns a business tells you, can you please leave my property, they've given you a criminal trespass warning. And then if you refuse, if they have authority over that property, then you can be arrested for criminal trespassing after you've been told to leave. Like if you're in a store, because some people think, well, I'm in the store, I got it right. You don't, if it's a store, it's not like, a sidewalk. So if you're in a store, you don't have a right to stay in the store if they tell you to leave. I think Gary says it best, leave, report it, say, I'm being treated this way inside of the store. But these, shop owners, some of them have firearms, and, we just have to, again, be mindful of our lives. We want to preserve our lives so that we can continue to fight this struggle that we're in and not give it up, over something that we can try to avoid. We've seen this behavior with Black officers and white officers. And I think it goes back to what Doug Evans said, that the history of policing has always been started with runaway enslaved Africans. And this is also where the statute, the citizen's arrest statute, comes out of this same kind of, it's created to give white men authority over Black people. And that's what you saw with Ahmaud Arbery, was here these white men, they're empowered. You're gonna sue somebody for being in a vacant house. Well, the idea is that you can, because they're Black, we're white, we're in America, we're in Georgia, and it's devastating consequences.
Yeah. And another thing is, unfortunately, man, we're living in a time now, Maui, that with our sons, especially with our age, or the sons of our age or similar ages, that everything they love to do is illegal. Young Black boys like to gather, man. They love to gather. And so, Black boys like to gather at the corner store, whether they went and stole some Nihilators or whatever they're getting out of there. You make it illegal. Black and brown boys like weed. You make it illegal. So what I'm finding out, man, and this is crazy, when you're facilitating a group and when you ask these young men, what do you like to do? 9 of the things they like to do is illegal. And what happened is somehow somebody has listened in on this conversation. And I tell people all the time, laws send you to jail and prison, not just the individual. And man, they've created these laws, man. These boys have to walk in these straight and narrow paths. They don't live in neighborhoods that allow them to do that. And to the young man, to the brother that have the mentees on here earlier, what do you do if you're not driving? First of all, you got to be careful who you're moving with. So you're not dumb. So if you're in a group with 5 people, you don't be the 6th person with the weed, or you don't be the 7th person with the gun. So you just got to be careful how you move, man. Unfortunately, we're living in a world now, man, that laws and people that even look like you, man, it's just out to get you, man. And I'm sorry that the life that we once lived one time, that's been taken away from you all, which boils down to these laws that this white supremacy, man, has put in place to just put us away, man. And it's sickening to me, man. So I don't want to get on that rant tonight, man. I'm done. So
no, hey, it's understood, Brother Gary. And it's unfortunate that all those things that you said there in terms of things that are illegal that they love to do or prefer to do are perpetuated by white supremacy and societal things, right? They're put into that environment for a reason, right? And then you get put into it, and then now we're putting you in this environment, and then we are able to incarcerate you or kill you, because you're breaking the rules of the laws.
See it in school, right? You see it in school all the time. You know, you asking a young brother to just sit still in this desk facing forward, man, that's dead. Our children shouldn't even be taught that way. In Quilombo and our African Center schools that we're a part of, we don't even get down like that, where we're just expected, you know, to sit in all of these straight rows and you got to sit for 45 minutes. No, and then if you move, you're moving around too much, and you might be moving because you're a genius, but they've made you a troublemaker, a problem child. I got a boy, man. The boy is so brilliant. One of my best friends, his son, brilliant. They wouldn't let him in the magnet program in his high school because he got some BS infractions in middle school. Now the test scores are off the charts. Boy almost scored a perfect SAT. But this is how, and if it weren't for the fact that his mother and father were able to advocate for him, he's taken off and put in a whole nother track, and he is an absolutely brilliant young person. So this is what's happening. This isn't paranoia. This is the reality of how the system deals with our young people. And so it's our job to protect them, to educate them, and truth be told, to politicize them so that they can process what's happening. Because the last thing we want is for them to think there's something wrong with them. Nothing wrong with them. This is something wrong with the system. But if we let this system just go unchecked, our children will have complexes about there being something wrong, and you know, I'm this or I'm that. Nah, you black and you beautiful and we love you and we got your back.
Mm-hmm. It goes back to what I was saying. Everything they love to do is wrong. Black boys like to beat on the desk in the classroom. The worst thing, I'm sitting here, I'm a grown man and I'm uncomfortable after sitting here for an hour. How do you expect them to sit down? Why do you have to sit down to learn? I learn better standing up. I perform better standing up. So you go to the classroom, Maui, you don't sit down. He started kicking the desk, you put him out to school. There's again, you got a young man who've experienced a failure in his life, and men don't recover from failures well. Again, everything they love to do is illegal. They love to go to the studio to do rap. Well, it's illegal to bring weed in the studio. I don't know what they're going to do, man. So I don't know, man. Maybe we need to let Miles write a book on it. I don't know.
That's the thing, man, is our brilliance gets muted. And it gets muted because our brilliance does not sit well within white supremacy. With that, man, we brothers, the three of us for sure could go on all night long in this subject matter, I know. But we don't want to, we've already gone over, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And Molly, I'm going to hand it over to you. You missed a couple of sessions.
Yeah.
And I feel like I could use you linking the chain.
Man, I appreciate it. Mama Njeri just had a birthday pass, her heavenly birthday. The day she made transition was the same day she was born, right around in Cobra's. We would always celebrate her birthday in Cobra convention, right? A reparations convention, man. So she was just a beautiful spirit and soul. And so she gave us, as we closed out each meeting, a ritual of locking arms, of holding hands, and repeating, I am a link in this chain.
I am a link in this chain.
And it won't break here.
And it won't break here.
I am a link in this chain.
I am a link in this chain.
And it won't break here.
And it won't break here.
We are links in this chain.
We are links in this chain.
And we won't break here.
And we won't break
here.
Ashe. Brothers, again, thank you so much. Brother Gary, thank you, man. Your words are strong. Really appreciate it. For those of you that were listening in, we appreciate you all listening in. If there's anything that we did not get to in the chat, we ask that you check in with us again the following week. One other thing that I want to mention before we check out is that we were very fortunate that Yvonne Lee of Heavenly Bites. Last week did an amazing job of putting together a bake sale that we were able to receive her donation of $650 to the Black Man Lab. If you want to donate to the Black Man Lab at all, we ask that you go to our website, blackmanlab.org, and there's a donation button on there. And anything that you can donate to the lab would be appreciated. And it's going to go to the work for helping these young Black men become great men of society and helping to improve this world. Again, thank you, Yvonne Lee. We love you. Next week.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Yeah. We'll have our Molly, you know what our topic is next week? I had it and I lost
it. No, but it'll be good. It'll be good. It'll be relevant, and it will always connect with young Black men. So y'all who are out there protesting, man, y'all be careful, be safe, and let us know when y'all go out so we can come out and have you all's back with the "We love you too much." And please register to vote and census. We need you to complete the census. Please complete the census. That's incredibly important. Yes. And share that out, y'all. Black men got to get counted.
Because you matter. You matter. Thank you again, everybody. Love you.